When you are solving the equation x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. So such an equation, one way to solve it is you take 4 the other side, and that becomes x squared is equal to positive 4. Now to remain with the value for x, and then you have to square root on both sides. So we take a square root here, we take also a square root there. And now that is going to remain with x being equal to, we know that the square root of 4 can either be 2 or can be negative 2. Now, when you are solving the equation x squared plus 4 is equal to 0, same way we are going to take for the other side, that is going to give x squared is equal to negative 4. Now to remain with x, we are going to take a square root on both sides. And that is going to give us x squared being equal to the square root of negative 4. Now the square root of a negative number is undefined. We can't know it even from a calculator. So because of this, mathematicians came up with I, which is a complex number. Now I represents the square root of negative 1. We know that from our sides, we can write negative 4 also as 4 times negative 1. And this can be split, and that is going to give us x squared being equal to root 4 times root negative 1. Now, we know that root 4 can either be positive or negative 2, so let me just write it as root 4. Now, the square root of negative 1 is what gives us an I. So where there is a square root of negative 1, we put an I there. And so this now gives us the square root of 4 is positive 2, but there is an I, or negative 2 together with an I. So such is what we call a complex number, this I. And so from this we can define a lot of complex numbers when we've been given. So firstly, we know that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. This is the most basic that we need to get to understand. So from this we're going to get, if we square what we have here, we square everything, that is going to give us I squared being equal to negative 1, like that. So at this point, let this be the first one we are starting with. So if we multiply this by an I, so if we multiply that by an I, this will be I squared times I. That is going to give us I to the power 3. And so we're going to have I to the power 3. And then negative 1 times I, that will give us negative I. Again, this stage we've reached that here, let's multiply by an I again. And so that will be, if we multiply again by an I, that will be I to the power 3 times I. That is going to give us I to the power 4. And that is going to be equal to negative I times I. That will be negative I squared. But we know that where there is I squared, we can put a negative 1. So we can also write this negative I squared as negative. Where there is I squared, we are going to put negative 1, just as we can see from this stage. And so negative 1 times negative, here we're going to get a positive 1. So I to the power 4 is a positive 1. Again, this stage we multiply it by an I. That is going to give us I to the power 5 being equal to 1 times I is an I. Again, here we can multiply by another I. That will give us I to the power 6 being equal to I times I. That will be I squared. But we know that I squared from here is a negative 1. Again, this point we can multiply by an I. That will give us I to the power 7 being equal to negative 1 times I. That will be negative I. We go on and multiply. This will be now negative I to the power 8 being equal to negative I times I. As we saw, it gave us positive 1. Again, we multiply. That will be I to the power 9 being equal to positive 1 times I. That is going to be I. Again, let's do multiply. That will give us I to the power 10, and that is going to be equal to I times I. that is going to be I squared, and we know I squared is -1. So what we have here, we can even get a general trend of what is happening. So we can see we have got -1, another -1, another -1. So what we are saying is, we can see this one is power 2, this one is power 6, this is power 10. So we are moving after how many numbers are we going to another -1? So we can see from 2 to 6 there's a difference of 4. From 6 to 10 there's also a difference of 4. So we can simply say I to the power 2, just this one, which is the I to the power 2. But if we add 4n, we are supposed to get a -1. So this n is representing positive integers. So if there is a 1, if we use n as 1, this will be 2 to the power 6, and that is -1. If this n, if the n is 2, then that is going to be 4 times 2, which is going to give us 8. 8 plus 2, that will be a 10, which we can see here, and I to the power 10 is still -1. So it continues to go on and on like that. So that would be for -1. Now if we consider another thing, just from what we've said here, so if we go to -I, we are seeing that we have got -I here, and then another -I we are seeing is at this point. So now for us to go to -I, how are we moving? We can see we have got power 3, and then we go to power 7. The next of course should be power 11. So we are moving in a difference of 4 again, but the smallest we are having is power 3. Okay, so I to the power 3, if we add to 3 we add 4, we are going to reach to power 7. To 7 we add 4, we are going to reach to 11. Again we add 4, it continues to go like that. So we just get the smallest. So we are saying I to the power 3 plus 4n, this should be able to give us -I. Now if we go to just 1, we have got 1 here, we have got 1 here. So the smallest giving us a 1 is power 4. So to the power 4, if we add a 4, that power, if we add another 4, we are going to get power 8. Power 8, if we add a 4, we are going to get power 12. All those are going to be giving us a 1. And so we can write an equation as I to the power 4 plus 4n, that is supposed to give us a 1. Now another thing, we have got an I here, we have got an I here. So we are seeing that to the power 5, if we add a 4, we are going to reach to the power 9. The power 9, if we add a 4, wherever we are going to reach, the answer is still going to give us an I. So what we are getting is I to the power 5 plus 4n should give us an I, where we are saying n is a positive integer. So this is true for all. So this should tell us when we have got, let's say they say write I to the power 200 in the form a plus ib. How do we get about that one? So for this one, what we are going to do is the I to the power 200, we are going to equate to one of these, which we have either this one, this one, this one, or this one. We see which form is I to the power 200 can be written in. Okay, so if we get this one, which is here, we say I to the power 200 is equal to I to the power 2 plus 4n. So this should mean the power should be the same, since the bases are the same, they are all i's. So it should give us 200 is equal to 2 plus 4n. If we take to the other side, that will be 200 minus 2, which will give us 198, and that is going to be equal to 4n. Now 198 divided by 4 to find the value of n is giving us 49.5. N is 49.5. Now we are saying n is an integer. An integer can't be a decimal. So that means I to the power 200 cannot be in this form, I to the power 2 plus 4n. So we can also test this one. Still, even this one is going not to work. We can just see a 3. If we subtract 200, we remove a 3, we are going to get 197, and 197 cannot be divided by a 4. So let's try this one which is here. Just see what it is going to give us. So we are saying I to the power 200. We want to equate it to I to the power 4 plus 4n. So that means the powers are the same. That would be 200 is equal to 4 plus 4n. So let's take this for the other side. So it will become negative and subtract. That will be 200 minus 4. That will be 196. And that is going to be 4n. So to remain with n, we are going to divide 196 by 4. And that is giving us 49. So 49 is an integer. So that means I to the power 200 is the same as I to the power 4 plus 4 times, where there is n here, we are putting a 49. And we know that anything that can be written in this form, then the value that we are going to get is a 1. That means I to the power 200 is equal to 1. So to write it in the form a plus ib, this is the form a plus ib. It's just that the imaginary part is 0. That is why we can't see it. So that is how we are able to express that one in that form. The same if you've been given just any power. Let's try another power. We see how we're going to work it out. So say we've been given to write I to the power 401 in the form a plus ib. How do we get about it? So again, we are going to get this so that one of them we equate it to this portion, and the one which gives us the value of n being a positive integer, then we are going to get what is this side, and it would have given us the value. So I to the power 400 is equal to, let's first try this one which is here, I to the power 5 plus 4n. Now we can equate the power since the bases we can see that they are the same. So that will give us 401 being equal to 5 plus 4n. Now if we take 5 this side, is going to be a negative value. So it will be now 401 minus 5, and that is going to give us 396, and that is going to be equal to 4n. Well, to remain with n, we are going to divide 396 by 4, and that is given us a value of 99. So this is an integer. 99 is an integer. If you want, you can test even these others. You can try to get this. You say I to the power 401 is equal to, let's say I to the power 4 plus 4n. We equate the powers. That to be 401 is equal to 4 plus 4n. So this is going to give us, we take for this side to be 401 minus 4, and that will give us 397. And that is going to be equal to 4n. To remain with n, we divide 397 by 4. That will give us 99.25. Now 99.25 is not an integer. Even if you try this one, it still give you the value of n being a decimal. Even this one, it will give you a value of n being a decimal. That means I to the power 400 can be written in this form. And we know that whenever we write something in this form, then the value is supposed to be an I. That means I to the power 401 is the same as just I, as we can see, because we are able to express it in that form. And so we have written it in the form a plus ib, where now we are saying a plus ib because we don't have a, That means a is 0. So you can also write I to the power 401 as 0 plus I. But we just write it as I because 0 is really not changing anything. So you can get the value of any power using this simple way.